It's only 4 words. This one's for John.
This one's for Pat.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to NFL with Kyle. I am a diehard Broncos fan, and I am really sorry that I haven't been able to put out more content. I've been really busy on my other channel, the Only Football Podcast, and we are growing over there. And I've been just kind of feeding the channel that's been growing, but I wanted to stop by and make some content because, as you guys know, we have come a long way since my last video. We went into this season with a projected 5.5 win total, and since then, we have really just excelled in every area. We have in my opinion, a top 5 defense. I know we didn't play our best game against Cleveland, but a top 5 defense. And Bo Nix right now is playing amazing. And I really think it's worth asking the question, what is the goal for the Denver Broncos? Because going into the season, I raise my hand. I'll be the first to admit, I said, if we make the playoffs, that season will be considered a success. I will be happy just with going into the playoffs. And I'm not saying that has changed. Of course, going into the playoffs would still be something that I would be happy with. But at the same time, I feel like as this team has shown us what they're capable of, the expectations for the fans have also increased. So I wanted to take a moment and evaluate those new expectations and ask not just myself, but Broncos country and maybe other fans that are looking at the Broncos and what they've been doing and ask the question, are these expectations realistic? And if so, why? And I think really all of this starts with Sean Payton. Going into the season, and if you follow me on X, you know I have been relentlessly posting threads about how other teams, other sources in the NFL, how they all viewed us as a 5.5 win total and how our roster from FanDuel was considered the 32nd ranked talent, meaning we had no talent. People said that I don't even know any of the guys on that team. Shoot, I remember PFF doing a prediction episode week 1 going into the Seahawks game. And they were like, I remember it was a girl and she was like, Riley Moss. I mean, it's a white corner going against Tyler Lockett. That's my analysis. It's a white corner going. And now you saw last week against Cleveland, that white corner was injured and our defense was, it kind of fell apart last week. Jameis Winston had 500 passing yards, 700 if you include all the pick sixes. But the point is Riley Moss has emerged as one of the top corners this year. And of course, on the other side, you have Patrick Surtain, who somehow is just being slept on so bad when it comes to the fans. It is really remarkable when you look at the disrespect that Patrick Surtain has dealt with this season. Did you know right now Marlon Humphrey has more Pro Bowl votes than Patrick Surtain? It is actually unimaginable. There's just no words for it. It makes no sense But I think the respect will return after a few winning seasons in a row. It is what it is with these kind of things. But it is an effing joke. It is just, it's a popularity contest. And for whatever reason, Patrick Surtain isn't popular. I have no idea why. I feel like he is somebody that, I mean, he's a technician at the position. The way he carries himself on and off the field is first class. And you never hear anything bad about the guy. He got his big contract, but leading up to that contract, you never heard of a holdout or, any kind of drama surrounding that subject. And the question is, why is he so unpopular? I'm not really sure, but in my opinion, he's the best corner in the league. And Marlon Humphrey, no disrespect to Marlon Humphrey, but for him to have more Pro Bowl votes than Patrick Surtain is really, really just hard to even fathom. And there's a lot I could dive into, but I'll just say this, and I'll put the Pro Bowl thing to bed. The Broncos still don't have a single player with the most Pro Bowl votes at their respective positions. Going into this season, this was the 32nd ranked team when it comes to talent. And even with them, according to those predictions and rankings, outperforming, there's really no credibility that has been given to any player. For instance, Nick Bonito, who is right up there with the leading sacks, the sack leader in the NFL. And if you look at the list of the top 5 leaders in sacks right now, it's really interesting because only one of those players has an interception. And that is the same player that has a touchdown. He's the only one with an interception or a touchdown. Talking about Nick Bonito. He is an absolute stud. He's amazing. And even Nick Bonito's not leading the position for Pro Bowl votes. Zach Allen, he's been one of the best, if not the best in the league this year. Not leading, Surtain not leading. But who cares about all of that? Like I said, it's a popularity contest, and none of these guys are popular. I kind of like that. I feel like it gives the team a little bit of a chip on their shoulder going in. Like, why are we not leading in any of these? Why are we not considered a top 5 team at this point in the season? What is it about us that makes other people laugh when they think about it? What is it about Bo Nix that makes people continue to say that he doesn't have a good arm? When you saw the throw that he made to Marvin Mims, the 93-yard touchdown, there's absolutely nothing to say. You watch that play, and you either can make that throw or you can't make that throw. And Bo Nix made that throw. The ball did not have a lot of loft on it. That was a dart straight down the middle of the field with a ton of speed on it to, be able to fit it in that window before a defender can make a play on the ball. Those are the type of throws that you make. And it's like, okay, well, maybe for some quarterbacks, arm strength improves as they get older. Tom Brady's did. There's plenty of quarterbacks that improve their arm strength. But I think the most likely reason was that he was scouted incorrectly. Just like every single year, there's quarterbacks that are not scouted properly. I think Bo Nix is going to be the best quarterback if Jaden Daniels continues to succeed. I think he will also be a success. We'll see what Caleb Williams can do when he gets some proper coaching. But I said it in the beginning of the season. I think this is going to go down as one of the greatest quarterback classes of all time. And I think Bo Nix, who was the last quarterback taken in the first round, I think he's going to be the reason for that, because we know Bo is going to work. We do. I mean, he's only going to get better at this point. He was undersold when it comes to everything about him. He's way more athletic than he was credited for. He's unreal at feeling pressure, even as a rookie. We were told that he had a Jimmy G arm. He doesn't have a Jimmy G arm. Okay. I'm not saying he has a Josh Allen Callan, but he's definitely in that next tier. Like Andrew Luck had that type of an arm as well. I'm feeling really good about Bo Nix, and he's getting better every single week. So we have a top 5 defense in the league, okay? We're number 3 in points per game. We're giving up 18 points per game on the season. And then you say, well, any team that gives up 18 points or less has a shot to go to the Super Bowl, because if you can only give up less than 20 points, if you give up less than 20 in a playoff game, you're asking your offense to score 20. Can you score 20 in the playoffs? Well, let's take a look, because the stats are kind of flawed when it comes to points per game, because as we know, Bo Nix dramatically improved from week 5, week 6 on. He really had his breakout game, in my opinion, against Tampa. And ever since that was week 3, ever since that game, he's only gotten better. But let's look at this for a second, because most people would say if you say, could Denver make it to the Super Bowl, they would say no. And if you ask which side of the ball is holding them back, everybody would say the offense, right? Nobody would say the defense. They would say the offense. Well, yards per game, okay? Let's just look at yards per game right now, okay? If you look at the last 3 games, Denver is actually 10th in the league with 375 yards per game. They had 400 yards last week, but let's look at points, because this is a league of points. We mentioned holding our opponents to 18 points or less. In the last 3 games, Denver leads the NFL in points per game. They're not top 5. They're not top 10. They're number 1. They're averaging 36 points per game in their last 3, okay? And they only had 41 last week. So it's not like they had a 70-point game and it's, tipping the stats one way. So you got a team that's heating up at the right time, scoring 36 points a game. They're in the last 3. They're giving up 18 points per game defensively. Now, am I sitting here saying that in the playoffs, Denver is going to score 36 points and only give up 18? Of course not. Of course, there's going to be, some room to move both of those numbers. But I feel like that is a huge window where you can give up 25 points and only score 30 instead of 36, and you're still looking pretty good. So I think when people look at Denver, I think the main thing that is keeping people from taking them serious is Bo Nix. Not because of his play, because obviously he's playing good enough right now to do whatever. We'll see what he looks like when he plays a playoff caliber team. Another critique is that when Denver went against Baltimore earlier in the season, we got destroyed. And we did. We got totally blown out. That was just a short week, daylight savings time, going to Baltimore. I know you guys are going to be like, he did not just throw in daylight savings time. But it's a real thing. It's one thing to go back in time. It's another thing to go forward in time on a short week, and then you lose an hour on top of that. And Baltimore has a way of embarrassing people at home. Shit, they embarrassed Detroit last year at home, and we know Detroit ended up being a really good team. Baltimore just does that to teams sometimes. But you know what really made me feel like Denver was for real is that the week after that, we played Kansas City, and honestly, Bo Nix outplayed Patrick Mahomes in that game. That was a punch in the mouth. Not Kansas City, Baltimore. That was an absolute gut-wrenching game. And the way Bo Nix and the Broncos responded the next week was a turning point in the season that changed everything. We outplayed the Chiefs. Bo Nix outplayed Patrick Mahomes. And the game came down to the very end. And of course, a chip shot field goal. People forget Bo Nix had over 3 minutes on the clock. I think there might have been 4 minutes. And he chewed up all of the clock. Kansas City tried, I think, two separate times to use their timeouts. And Bo Nix had these amazing 3rd down conversions. One of them, He had the ball snapped. He rolled out to his right, and he just threw a dart to Cortland Sutton, and that pretty much ended the game. Denver would just run the ball twice with Audric Estime, who that was another coaching thing that I was like, man, look at Sean Payton putting the ball in Audric Estime's hands at the very end when you know that the Chiefs think their only chance of winning is to get a strip or fumble the ball, and they put in a guy that had 2 fumbles on the season. They made him carry around a football the entire week because he kept fumbling the ball, and Sean put him in the game in that situation to run the clock down and to show Audric, hey, I trust you. I drafted you. This is my vote of confidence. That was a statement. Sean Payton has a lot of these moments this season. But then a chip shot field goal gets blocked. It's the story of the year for Kansas City. But it was not going to be our story, because when you lose a game like that to Baltimore, and then you give it all you got and you outplay Mahomes and you still lose, it really kind of shows what you're made of, right? You look at the way we beat the Falcons, that game was honestly the game that would ultimately end up defining the season for the Atlanta Falcons. They have not been the same since that game. They haven't. So you have these type of games where you lose, and you can lose a couple games, but you have to move on to the next week. And in a position like that, you would have thought, man, Denver's close, but it's just not their year. And then they play the Falcons and win 38-6. Okay. They stomped a mud hole in the Falcons. And that would be the turning point for both of our teams. The Falcons haven't been the same since then. Denver hasn't lost since then. And since that game, Bo Nix and the Broncos have the most points in the NFL per week. Okay? Number 1 in the league. So we're on a 3-game winning streak. We should be on a 4-game winning streak if the field goal would have gone through. And that would have been a win over the Chiefs. We would be a 9-4 team right now. And we still have games coming up, 4 games coming up. You're talking about potentially being able to be a 13 in 14 or 12-4 team. Instead, our ceiling will be 11-5. But let me just tell you, if Denver wins out the rest of their games, that means that they're going to go into the playoffs riding a 7-game winning streak, potentially still leading the NFL in points per week since that game against the Falcons, and having a top 10 defense. Honestly, it's top 3. So what is the ceiling for the Denver Broncos? Well, I, for one, think that the ceiling is indeed the whole thing, the Super Bowl. You look back at some of the success that other rookie quarterbacks had. CJ Stroud comes to mind last year. He was amazing. Offensively, the Texans were even better than the Broncos are this year, but they didn't have a top 3 defense. They didn't. And now they do. They got a game against the Colts coming up. Then they play the Chargers on Thursday night. If they win those 2 games, they're automatically a playoff team, and they're not going to be the 7th seed anymore. And they're not even the 7th seed right now because the Chargers lost Sunday night. And this makes a big difference because then they play the Bengals and then the Chiefs, where they're wearing their old school Denver Bronco uniforms, and they win these games, guys. And all of a sudden, Denver is going to find themselves as the 5 seed, most likely. Okay, let's say they go 3-1. Okay, I think worst case, as long as they beat the Chargers and the Colts in their next 2 games, they're going to end up being the 6th seed. And why this is so important is because as Kansas City continues to win and Buffalo losing to the Rams, almost guaranteed that the Buffalo is going to be the number 2 seed. And that is very bad news for whoever becomes the 7th seed. Because in my opinion, I feel like Buffalo is the best team in the AFC right now. I know they're coming off a loss, but those kinds of games happen. Hell, Look at the game that we just played against Cleveland. Nobody thought that that was our defense. You know what I mean? Our defense is top 3. I don't know what happened. Those games happen. The Rams, they punched Buffalo in the face, but look at how Buffalo fought in that game. Josh Allen broke a world record in the process of it. So I think whoever is going to be the 7th seed is most likely going to be eliminated immediately. Okay, so the way it is right now, Denver is the 7th seed. Okay, the Chargers are listed as the 6th seed. I don't think this is updated because I think that changed. I thought it changed at least. Let me look it up one more time. Playoff picture. No, it still has the Broncos as the 7th seed, but the Chargers and the Broncos have the same record. So the Ravens are the 5th seed, okay? And the Chargers have to play Tampa Bay. In Tampa Bay, they're right now the 4th seed, okay? They just made it into the playoffs with the Falcons losing to the Vikings and the Bucs being able to win over the Raiders. So the Bucs can't afford to lose because the Falcons are right there, right behind them. So, I mean, for Tampa Bay, they feel like that's a playoff game. So you're going to get Tampa Bay's best shot against the Chargers. The Chargers lose that game and the Broncos take care of business against the Colts. That Thursday night game right around the corner is going to give Denver 10 wins if they beat the Chargers on that Thursday night game. First time a Thursday night game has ever been flexed. And it was because they knew that this game was going to have massive implications. So the Broncos would move to the 6th seed. I don't know if the Ravens are going to win out, but it's worth taking a look at their records since the 5, 6, and 7 seed are all tied with an 8-5 record. So this is the Ravens' remaining schedule, okay? They got the Giants. That'll put them at 9 wins, okay? Then they play the Steelers. The Steelers beat them earlier in the year. This one's going to be in Baltimore. I don't know if the Steelers beat the Ravens twice, all right? I think it's a toss-up, but I'm going to give it to the Ravens just to be conservative here for the Broncos, okay? So that would put them at 10 wins. Then they play the Texans and the Browns. I think they beat the Browns, so that's 11 wins. So to me, what is the most likely record here is that the Ravens are going to be an 11-7 team. Okay, or 11-6. I'm sorry. They're going to be an 11-6 team. Okay. Now, I think that the Broncos, if they win their final 4, they would be a 12-win team. But I think it's likely that they lose one as well. And I think the Ravens and Broncos could both be 11-6. And then the Chargers, unless they get caught by the Dolphins or the Colts, because right now the Chargers only have a 2-game lead. If they lose to Tampa and the Broncos, I don't have the Colts beating Denver, so that would help them out. But if the Dolphins, who are also 6-7, the Bengals just lost tonight, so that they're pretty much done for. The Bengals won. Sorry, that was a weird game. The Bengals, it felt like both teams lost somehow. The Bengals won, so that moves them to 5-8, but still, that is I just don't see a way that they're going to win. They have a 3% chance. But the Dolphins, right, they're going to be the team that potentially would jump the Chargers at the 7 seed. So the Ravens and Broncos finished the year both 11-6. The Ravens would be the 5 seed because they have the tiebreaker because they stomped a mud hole in us earlier in the season. So whatever, I think that's fine because the way that would work out is that the Ravens would have to go to Houston and play the Texans, which would be a rematch of the divisional round last year. The only difference is that game was in Baltimore. This one would be in Houston. And then the Broncos, they would go play the Steelers, who I think we match up with better than the Ravens. Okay? So the Steelers are 10-3 right now. They have a 2-game lead on the Ravens. So hopefully the Steelers hold that spot because I would much rather go and play the Steelers in Pittsburgh, then go to Baltimore and play the Ravens, which would ultimately end up happening to us if that Ravens ended up winning the division, because the Steelers have the tiebreaker over us as well. So we want the Steelers to keep winning, okay? So all you Russell Wilson Broncos haters out there, you gotta just embrace this for a little bit and cheer for the Steelers, okay? So Denver would end up playing the Steelers. The Chargers or the Dolphins would have to go to Buffalo and play the Bills. That's not a good situation for the Chargers or the Dolphins. You know what? Whoever it is, they're going to lose. Let's just be real. If it's us, we're going to lose. Probably. All right? Let's be real. The Buffalo Bills are going to make it to the divisional round. The Chiefs aren't going to play until the divisional round. The Ravens would play the Texans. I think it's likely that the Ravens would win that game. Okay, but you always got to account for home field advantage in the playoffs. The Broncos, though, going into Pittsburgh and playing the Steelers, I'm not saying like we're definitely winning that game. All I'm saying is I like the fact that Sean Payton coached Russell Wilson all year. I feel like he knows him. I feel like the Broncos match up with the Steelers. I think when we played, I was at the game. Bo Nix's first game at Mile High was against the Steelers. And the Broncos, in Bo Nix, we had nothing. All right, we had nothing going at week 1 and week 2. Bo Nix was still learning. He was getting his footing, and it was like he's a totally different quarterback right now. And even in that game, Denver, I think, lost 10-16. I mean, it was a close game. We're a totally different team. I think it would go down to the wire, but I think Denver could beat the Steelers. I think the Ravens would beat the Texans. Okay, so those are your football games. Okay, you would have Broncos Steelers, then you would have Ravens Texans, and then you would have Chargers and Bills. So your remaining playoff teams at that point would be Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, and Broncos. So the Broncos then would go to Kansas City because they would be the lowest remaining team. If there was ever a year that Denver wants to play the Chiefs, guys, it's this year. I know a lot of people were saying, I hope the Chiefs become the 2nd seed because you thought we were going to stay the 7 and you wanted to play Kansas City. Well, you're going to get your wish because Denver's going to beat the Steelers, and then they're going to have to play the highest seed as the lowest remaining seed. Okay? We've already beaten Kansas City. I know we lost, but mentally, Bo Nix has already outplayed Mahomes in Arrowhead. You cannot underestimate how massive that is. So I think if there was ever a year Kansas City was going to be one and done in the playoffs, call me crazy. I think it's this year. I feel like the 9 lives they've used them all in the regular season. I feel like their luck is out. Okay. I'm not going to be convinced that the Chiefs are so good that Denver has no shot. I feel like we should be the favorite in that game. So the Broncos, I think they would beat the Chiefs. I do. I feel like they're the better team right now. Okay? I'm sorry. The Bills would play the Ravens. Okay? Now, this is crazy because that means if the Broncos beat the Steelers and the Chiefs, which I think are 2 of the most friendly matchups in the playoffs, then the Broncos have to beat the Bills or the Ravens. But here's the kicker. If the Ravens get the win or Buffalo, Denver is going to be on the road for this game. Unless the Ravens fall, to the if they fall down to the 6th seed and Denver takes the 5th, that messes up all of this. So I'm not going to go there because I think what I'm saying is the most likely outcome. Denver ultimately would have to, for the AFC Championship game, go to Buffalo, or they would have to go to Baltimore. that's kind of the end of the road, okay, for me. Do I think that Denver has a shot? Yeah, of course I do. If I had to, my life depended on it, tell you guys that Denver's going to go on the road and beat Buffalo or Baltimore, I just can't. I can't. I mean, I'm going to believe. I'm going to be all in. But I feel like that is the ceiling. But man, you're talking about being one game from the Super Bowl. This, to me, is why Sean Payton should be Coach of the Year. Look at the way we're talking about this team. Now, there's been a lot of confusion about Coach of the Year and whether, how really do you determine Coach of the Year? So I found an article that I wanted to share with you guys because I really feel like Sean Payton should be the Coach of the Year this year. There's a couple different reasons a coach wins Coach of the Year. There seems to be three main ways. You got these three factors: improvement, so taking your team from 5-11 to 11-5, going good to great, so being a 10-win team and then becoming a 14-win team, or adversity, losing your best players and then making the playoffs anyway. Okay. 15 of the last 22 Coach of the Year winners won because their teams improved significantly. The only ones that didn't, right, the 7 that didn't, was Mike Vrabel in 2021, who got it because of adversity. Vrabel lost Derrick Henry and still led the Titans to the number 1 seed. John Harbaugh, who went good to great in 2019, took the Ravens from 10-6 to 14-2, and took the NFL by storm with Lamar Jackson. Bruce Arians in 2014, the Cardinals improved. This was an adversity award. The Cardinals improved by only 1 win, but they lost Carson Palmer for the season after 6 games and still made it to an 11-5 record. Bill Belichick, good to great, 2003, 2007, and 2010. All 3 of those wins came when the Patriots won at least 4 more games than their previous season, but the Pats were already good. And then Andy Reid in 2002 with the Eagles, going good to great. Philly won 1 more game in 2002, but captured the number 1 seed at 12-4 in the NFC. So for the most part, Coach of the Year, it comes down to which teams improved significantly. And that would probably explain why a guy like Mike Tomlin has never won a Coach of the Year award, is because how do you improve dramatically when you have never had a losing season, right? So the voting, how does the voting works? The NFL uses AP's award as its official one, but there's several other outlets. So voters pick 1 player. There's a total of only 50 ballots. Here's what's really interesting, okay? This is what makes Coach of the Year different than every award. With NFL MVP, there's almost always a consensus or pretty close to it. With Coach of the Year, there's often 6 or more coaches who gets votes, and the winner doesn't always even get 50% or more of the votes. That's what makes it so different, because there's so many coaches that you could make a real case for being Coach of the Year. But what kind of stats do the voters care about? There's 2 main things that stood out here. First-year coaches win at a pretty high rate. So 12 of the last 31 winners were first-year coaches relative to how many there are in the league. And then coaches with defensive backgrounds win slightly more often. It's not because the voters prefer defensive coaches. It's just defense is much less predictable year over year. So a defense will make a huge jump one season, and then the coach will get credit for it. The defense falls apart the next year, but it doesn't matter because the coach already won the award and hopefully cashed a bet for you. Now, the teams that lost by the most games due to injury in 2021, Broncos, Niners, Lions, Jets, and Ravens, all of those teams were considered for Coach of the Year. Okay. Now here's the records for the history of Coach of the Year. Mike Vrabel in 2021 was 11-5. Kevin Stefanski in 2020, I'm just going to chronologically go down so I don't have to say the year anymore. Kevin Stefanski, 6-10. John Harbaugh, Ravens, 10-6. Matt Nagy, 5-11. Sean McVay, 4-12. These are all the previous records, okay? So let me do it a different way. Sean McVay went from 4-12 to 11-5. Matt Nagy went from 5-11 to 12-4. Harbaugh 10-6 to 14-2. Stefanski 6-10 to 11-5. And Mike Vrabel went from 11-5 to 12-5. So the narrative, that there has to be a narrative. It doesn't have to be, but in 99% of cases, the record and the team performance generally speaks for itself, but it doesn't hurt to have some positive narrative in your favor. For instance, the fact that the Broncos drafted Bo Nix and Sean Payton was like, Bo Nix was our guy. If we had the number 1 overall pick, Bo Nix was going to be the quarterback we drafted. And it's crazy because Sean was actually going to go to where Bo lives just so he could be there in person when he drafted Bo Nix. So all the people that say like, oh, he just took whatever quarterback fell to him, it's absolutely not true. And the only reason I'm so passionate to point out that it's not true is because I think it actually robs Sean Payton of the credibility that he deserves for spotting Bo Nix, because I think at this point we can all agree that he was right about Bo Nix. And when you make it seem like he just took the guy that fell to him, it's like you're removing what he actually did and you're replacing it with luck. And that's just not true. Okay. Kevin Stefanski in 2020, you got the Browns out of the gutter. Sean McVay in 2017 revolutionized the Rams. Jason Garrett in 2016 used a rookie quarterback and a running back to post a 13-3 record. That was Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. Bruce Arians took over for Chuck Pagano, who left with his leukemia treatments, and he led the Colts to a 9-3 mark with a rookie quarterback. That was Andrew Luck. So, like, of course, many of these teams also made huge improvements in their records year over year, but the narratives just set them apart. It's just a bonus to have a narrative. So I think when it comes to the talent on the roster, the 5.5 win projection, Bo Nix being the 6th quarterback taken, and then Bo Nix potentially being the offensive rookie of the year, I feel like you have to give it to Sean Payton, right? Especially with the top 3 defense. The one thing is the market is getting a lot smarter. The betting market is getting a lot smarter about this award. Sportsbooks used to price the coaches of the best teams at the top. Now they're in the middle because the people they figured it out that coach of the year just doesn't go to the best record. That's how people used to bet on this award, but not anymore. So the candidates this year for coach of the year, of course, you have Mike Tomlin, who I feel like at some point needs to get it. And the way he handled the Justin Fields, Russell Wilson situation makes me feel like he would be a very deserving candidate to finally win the award. I'm not sure why or how he's never won it, but I think it's because there's no shock element to Mike Tomlin. It's like you kind of know what you're going to get. There's got to be a narrative. There's got to be taking a bad team and making them good. And that just hasn't really been the case. But, I feel like you can't harm a guy that hasn't ever sucked. If anything, you got to give it to him. But right now, Dan Campbell's the favorite. I don't know if Dan Campbell's going to win. You have to overcome adversity. You could say that losing Aiden Hutchinson, but the fact that the defense got better, I'm not sure if that is going to help him or hurt him. It depends on what angle the guys take. Kevin O'Connell is in second. He would be deserving. And then Mike Tomlin and Sean Payton. And then Dan Quinn and Mike McDonald. I feel like it's going to be Sean Payton, Mike Tomlin, Kevin O'Connell, or Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell didn't win it last year when I felt like that was his year to win it. Instead, they gave it to Stefanski, I believe. But they gave it to Stefanski. I believe they gave it to Kevin Stefanski. And I'll do a quick 2023 Coach of the Year. Yeah, they gave it to Kevin Stefanski. So I feel like a lot is about to change, and I wanted to be here to tell you guys because I feel like it's a really important part of the season, because I feel like the national media, the way that your coworkers and the people that you talk to on a day-to-day basis, the way they view the Broncos is only 2 weeks away from massively changing. I'm talking about Sean Payton being the new favorite to win Coach of the Year, Bo Nix becoming the new favorite to be Offensive Rookie of the Year. He is right there neck and neck with Jaden Daniels, and the Denver Broncos being considered a team that nobody wants to play in the playoffs. But we have to beat the Colts. Like, this is a huge game for us. The Colts are only 2 games back. They have a very easy schedule. So if Denver loses this game, they have to win out. And to just avoid that type of pressure, like, you have to win this game. But I feel like these are the new Denver Broncos. Like, we don't have to worry about them the way we did last year. Like, people are like, this is a trap game. It's not a trap game. The definition of a trap game is usually there is a team that has nothing to play for, and they try to spoil your season. Everybody knows that the Colts are the team that's chasing us right now. This is not a trap game. Like, our players, the fans, we're all locked in here. This is going to be a home game, and it's going to be a must-win. So, in my opinion, a trap game can't be a must-win, right? If you're in a must-win, it's not a trap game, because that implies that our players are going to get caught with their pants down, and that's just not the case. If we get beat, it's going to be because the Colts were better than us. It's not going to be because our players just didn't take the Colts serious, okay? But I feel like the game we lost last year on Christmas to New England, when our season was on the line, that game was the old Broncos. The new Broncos lost to the Ravens and the Chiefs in a terrible way, and then smoked the Falcons. If you look at our players, you know what our athletes do during the bye week says a lot about the mindset of the team. You hear about players taking the bye week and going to Vegas, or, going to the Caribbean. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. And if your season's over and you have a late bye, whatever. But our players have been around the facility all week. Jaleel McLaughlin has been at the facility. Zach Allen says that he's just been rehabbing his body all week, and he said his body feels as good as it did when the season started. That is huge news for us. We did have to elevate a corner, so it looks like Riley Moss may not be able to go this week, which probably means he doesn't play against the Chargers, but hopefully we'll be able to just have him healthy for the postseason, assuming that we're in that. But like, our players are watching film, they're working on their body, and they believe in what this team can do this year. So I think you should too. I think in a couple weeks, if Denver wins these games, the NFL train is going to catch up to where I am right now. So I feel like you guys should be excited to be a Broncos fan. I know there's a lot of pessimist Bronco fans that are just like, relax, it's a rookie quarterback. You don't want to get yourself excited because you don't want to be disappointed. I'm here to tell you, let yourself get excited. You've waited 10 years to be excited. And now that it's here, don't pass up on this opportunity. The Broncos are a legitimate team with a great defense and the best rookie quarterback in the NFL. And that alone, and then with the coach of the year running everything, like this team can go to the AFC Conference Championship this year. What they do in that game remains to be seen, but they absolutely, this year, who would have thought a 5.5 win team can go to the AFC Championship game? And next year, we get all of our money back. We got all of our draft picks. We might bring in a T. Higgins. Who knows what we're going to do? But what I do know is next year, the Broncos are going to be a lot of people's division winner, and they are no longer going to be out of people's playoff picture in the preseason. Everything has changed. Everything is different now. Of course, I had Bill in the comment here. What's up? He said, long night, Kyle. I just wanted to put this video out as we get close. But thank you guys for watching. If you're a Broncos fan or if you just enjoyed this, please hit the thumbs up button. Let me know in the comments what you think about all of this. Am I too high on the Broncos right now? Do you feel like we are really not in that tier to be able to compete for a Super Bowl? I don't know if I'm ready to say we're in the Buffalo-Baltimore tier, but I don't know. We'll see what they look like in the next 4 weeks. If they continue to score 30 points a game for the next 4 weeks and they win all those games, I might put them in that tier. And I want you guys to be honest with me in the comments and let me know where you have them. As always, thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys on the next stream. You guys are beautiful. Broncos country. It's time to believe.